Yo, our new flannel has 2 front pockets and an inside pocket on the left side. Our things are amazing. If the Marvel Cinematic Universe is to be remembered for one thing, it's that over the past 10 years, it's created a very tightly connected group of films, all featuring various different characters from various different corners of the galaxy, and all to tell one singular complete story. If it's to be remembered for 2 things, it would be that other studios would try and copy this formula with very little success. Now, part of keeping this tightly connected continuity together is keeping what's known as a timeline, a list of all the films in chronological order, when exactly they took place in the story. Now, admittedly, this is kind of obvious stuff. Iron Man 1 clearly takes place before Iron Man 2. The Avengers is clearly set after the events of Thor and Captain America, the First Avenger. But sometimes things can get a little confusing. Sometimes a movie will come out that will alter or contradict what's already been established in the timeline from previous films. Marvel does have an official timeline of events in the MCU, they've just never released it publicly. It would be nice if they did, however. This way we, the audience, know what's supposed to take place when, and maybe clear up some confusion that we may have. Well, apparently Marvel has now officially released their timeline in their new book, Marvel Studios: The First 10 Years. And while it does clear up some of the confusing elements, it does raise some more questions. So let's take a look at it and see if we can't figure out what's important to know. Probably should have taken these off before I started filming. This week, Titan Books released Marvel Studios: The First 10 Years, a commemorative book celebrating all that Kevin Feige and crew have done since 2008. It's a pretty cool book, I assume. I wasn't given an advance copy, and I wasn't able to get my hands on one before making this video, so whatever, I'm not bitter. You're bitter. But it doesn't matter because the most interesting part of the book has already been posted online, and that is the mysterious Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline. When does every film take place? It's been a point of contention and debate amongst fans for many years now, especially since the release of Spider-Man: Homecoming, which pretty much threw a wrench into everything. The film opens in the immediate aftermath of Avengers 1, right after the Chitauri invasion. And then it cuts to the present day with a big title screen that says 8 years later. Up until this point, it was generally believed that every Marvel movie took place in the year it was released. Spider-Man: Homecoming was released in 2017, and if it took place in 2017, that means 8 years prior would be 2009, 3 years before the Avengers was released in theaters. Or if Avengers 1 did take place in 2012, that would mean that Spider-Man: Homecoming takes place in 2020. A few years from now. Since the release of Homecoming, it's pretty much been confirmed that 8 years later was a mistake. Kevin Feige even officially stated that there is an official timeline at Marvel of when exactly the films take place, and Homecoming does not take place 8 years after the Avengers. He promised that they would officially release it to the public, and after a while, they finally did. In a book they didn't send me. Though to be fair, I didn't even know this book existed. So let's look at this timeline. I should note that Ant-Man and the Wasp isn't on there. They probably finalized it before the movie was officially released and therefore had its official place in the timeline confirmed. I'm gonna say that's okay because if you saw the movie, then you know that it pretty much takes place around the same time as Infinity War. So not that big of a deal. We begin in 1943 with Captain America: The First Avenger, and that takes place from 1943 to 1945. We then jump all the way to 2010 with Iron Man 1. Thor, The Incredible Hulk, and Iron Man 2 then take place in 2011, and then the first Avengers movie and Iron Man 3 take place a year later in 2012. Thor: The Dark World takes place in 2013, while Captain America: The Winter Soldier and both Guardians of the Galaxy movies take place in 2014. Age of Ultron and Ant-Man happen in 2015, while Captain America: Civil War and Spider-Man: Homecoming officially occur in 2016. The events of Doctor Strange actually spans between 2016 and 2017. And finally, Thor: The Dark World, Black Panther, and Avengers: Infinity War all take place in 2017. Now, if you ask me, that's a fairly comprehensive list, and it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. Everything occurs basically in the order we assumed they occurred in to begin with. The post-credits scene of Ragnarok has Thor and Loki encounter a big-ass spaceship. And then in the opening credits of Infinity War, we see that that was Thanos' ship, and he attacked them looking for the Infinity Stone. Also, they do reference the events of the Incredible Hulk in Iron Man 2. It's very subtle and very easy to miss, but it is there, and this does line up with what Marvel is trying to tell us here. Now, Doctor Strange taking place from 2016 to 2017 makes a lot of sense. It shows that he spent a lot of time in Kamar-Taj really studying and honing his abilities. And this timeline confirms that Spider-Man Homecoming took place only 4 years after the first Avengers movie, so half of what it told us initially. It's a shame, really, that Homecoming is now stuck with a big-ass 8 years later title card. I mean, unless they George Lucas it, but Marvel doesn't really do that. Now, as cool as it is to have this official statement from Marvel as to what films occur when, it does raise just as many questions as it answers. For example, in Infinity War, which takes place in 2017, Tony Stark says that he's had Thanos inside his head for the past 6 years.
It's you who doesn't understand that Thanos has been inside my head for 6 years.
Now, initially, I thought he was referring to his scary vision from Age of Ultron, the one where he sees all the Avengers dead. But Age of Ultron, according to this new timeline, occurred in 2015. 2 years before the events of Infinity War. So is he not referring to that? Is he referring to the events of the first Avengers movie, where he got caught up in the wormhole trying to nuke Thanos' ships?
Thanos has been inside my head for 6 years, since he sent an army to New York, and now he's back.
That makes more sense in terms of time frame, but again, per this timeline, Avengers 1 took place in 2012, 5 years before Infinity War. 6 years before Infinity War, per the timeline, would be Iron Man 2. And I don't seem to recall any Thanos-related things happening in Iron Man 2. Unless it has something to do with Mickey Rourke's bird, but I doubt it.
I want my bird. I want my bird.
It doesn't stop there. Per the timeline, Black Panther takes place 1 year after Captain America's Civil War, and therefore the same year as Infinity War. And sure, this seems logical given the 2 post-credits scenes, especially the Bucky scene at the very end. But at the same time, the beginning of Black Panther really makes it seem like it takes place not that long after the events of Civil War. The death of King T'Chaka is still fresh in everybody's mind. Everybody is still talking about it. And if Infinity War is only 1 year after Civil War, then it makes Rhodey's line to Cap about having a rough couple of years seem incorrect.
Must have been a rough couple of years.
Yeah, well, the hotels weren't exactly 5-star.
So great, we got this official timeline, but there are still some questions about when and where certain films take place in the MCU. And I'm sure this raises a whole bunch of other inconsistencies that I haven't touched upon here. But is it really that important? Is it really that important to know that both Winter Soldier and the Guardians films all take place in 2014? If you ask me, the answer is no. And I honestly think that that is missing the point of having a timeline to begin with. To me, an official timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe should be used as a guide to tell us, the audience, when a film takes place in the overall continuity, but it doesn't have to go down to the exact year of each film. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter how many years take place between Civil War and Black Panther. All that really matters is that we know that Civil War happens before the events of Black Panther. Now, yes, obviously we can infer this from when the films were released to theaters in real life, but that's not always the case. Just look at the 2 Guardians movies. They both take place in the same year, even though Guardians 2 came out in 2017, the same year as Ragnarok and Homecoming. For me, this timeline is more for when this era of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is over, fans and newcomers can sit back and watch these films in a chronological order rather than a release date order. And you know what that's kind of like? Actual comics. How many years occur between stories isn't really what's important. Just what story happens first and then second and then third is what's important. In comics, with very few exceptions, all major events happen just a few years ago. Uncle Ben was shot just a few years ago. Captain America was unfrozen just a few years ago. The Hulk got shot into space and landed on a gladiator planet where he became Warrior King just a few years ago. And now with the movies, we basically have the exact same thing. Tony Stark revealed to the world he's Iron Man just a few years ago. Sokovia was almost destroyed by Ultron just a few years ago. Thanos snapped his fingers and killed half the universe? Say it with me now. Just a few years ago. So yeah, don't stress about how many years take place in between films. Just focus on the order itself, and hell, just focus on the movies themselves, the movies individually. You'll have a much better viewing experience in the long run, trust me. Although truth be told, the biggest question for me is, where are the TV shows on this timeline? Where are those one-shots they used to put on all the DVDs? I get that this is mostly supposed to be focused on the movies, but the canonical status of the shows and one-shots have been in question for a long time, and not appearing on this list kind of seals their fate as being inessential. But what do you think about this official timeline? Does it make sense to you? Are you happy that we have it? Do you still have lingering questions, or could you honestly not care less? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. That Marvel Studios book apparently came out this week, so if you want it, I'll put a link in the description for you so you can get it on Amazon, along with a couple of other MCU related things that I think you'll enjoy. Also, I don't know if you saw, but we did just launch our new fall and winter collection over on Wulff Apparel. We got some nice new things for you. We got this fancy flannel shirt. We got this fancy new t-shirt with a brand new design on it. We got this very fancy hooded sweatshirt with our logo on the back, and these two buttons from a controller you may have owned as a kid, and a cartoonishly big beanie with our logo on it. Kids these days. All this new stuff is available at wulffdenapparel.com, along with our classic collection of stuff like the classic shirts and this hat, and we're running a Black Friday sale this week, so get while the getting's good, fam. And of course, new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday. Saturday is still the backlog day, and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern is Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that. Like this video and share it with a friend who also may have been confused about the timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Show them this video, and hopefully it not only clears things up for them, but it puts their mind at ease. It's not that big of a deal. Thank you all for watching, and hey, Happy Thanksgiving.